solidarity with the most vulnerable in our culture.
This really is a tremendous moral issue and one that should engage each and every person of goodwill. This will be a good initiative that will grow in bringing people to appreciate the importance of right to life in our state of Connecticut.
The Brotherhood of the Knights of Columbus really helps encourage men to be the men they need to be to help transform society. Throughout the organization, it really attracts the best that Catholic men have to offer.
Standing for the unborn, standing for life. I think that is what's attractive to the young Catholic man, but every Catholic man.
Educational. You're watching WLAE-TV, celebrating 40 years of New Orleans public television.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we cover all the home teams we do each and every week. Saints, LSU, Pelicans, Tulane, and the University of New Orleans are all on tap today. To break it down, two of the best we have in the state. Two guys that, again, are doing it right here in New Orleans. Seth Lewis of WLAE-TV and also Jared Paul Joseph of WGNO-TV. Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming down. Yeah, your second time on our program.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your maiden voyage, Jared. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Well, guys, we start off again with, you guys letting know, folks know a little bit about what you guys are involved in at your station. Seth, we'll take you first.
Well, look. Fourth Down on 4 is obviously our main baby on Sunday nights at 10:30, but we have a lot of really good things going on, and we have a lot of things that you can also see on our website, WLTV.com, as well as the WWL Plus app on Roku. So much great content that we got from the Super Bowl week. Not only stuff that was involved in sports, but also like Doug went to like several cocktail bars in the area. Right. And featured like special cocktails and showed those things around. We're going to have a special program with that coming up. So a lot of really good stuff for us at Channel 4.
Doug's a master mixologist, huh?
He is a master mixologist. You know what I mean? Like he might have developed a habit during COVID, but
I mean, he's always on. I see the videos all the time, mixing up the drinks. So there you go. Nothing wrong with that. Jared, welcome to the show. For the audience. Again, tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Oh, yes, sir. I'm a guy from Eunice, Louisiana, but I'm over here in New Orleans now, working at WGNO, and we have a lot of shows ourselves. Football season, we have Friday night football. Right now, we're in the middle of Friday night sports, giving you a little bit of volleyball, giving you some girls and boys basketball. Then about a month after that, we'll have Friday night fastball. As high school sports again, they gear up into the playoffs for both baseball and softball, and we have a lot of features going on as well. One of our reporters, John Sokoloff, just did a good New Orleans connection, talking about some of the players who play in the New Orleans area, also being the sons of of some of the Pelicans coaching staffs. KB Brewer over at John Curtis, one of the highlights over there. And, we have a lot of Super Bowl coverage on the website, WGNO.com, and very much, keeping it local, talking about guys like Devontae Smith winning the championship along with the Philadelphia Eagles, guys like the orchestrator of the Dome Patrol with Vic Fangio. So really making sure that we keep the locality really going there and just making sure the entire time we have a good time with it. And shout out to Richie Mills and Megan Glover as well. We have a great staff over there.
And if I may say,
Sure.
I've known Jared since he was in college,
Right.
since he was a pup.
Right.
Talking to his.
Y'all both pups to me.
No, yeah. Well, he's a super pup. But no, I've known Jared since he was in college. We both went to LSU, but I was in the business when I had a chance to speak to his class back at LSU, and then him being from Eunice. I'm from here, but my family moved to Opelousas after Hurricane Katrina, so we have the St. Landry connection. So I've seen him come up to get to this point. So I'm very proud of him and very happy to be sitting with him today.
Well, 1,000% an honor to be able to just sit alongside Seth and have him as one of my first mentors and also be a colleague as well now.
That's fantastic. And I'm happy to have both you guys on the program today. Unfortunately, we start with a little bit of bad news on this program as we are taping this program on a Wednesday. You guys will be seeing this starting on a Thursday night. The University of New Orleans is being investigated by the NCAA for an alleged betting scandal. 4 of UNO's top scorers, James White, Josh Short, Day Hunter, and Jamon Vincent, have been sidelined since the 74-58 loss to Incarnate Word on January the 27th. They started off with a new starting lineup on February the 1st. Jeff Goodman reported on X that the absence is linked to an NCAA betting investigation, sports betting investigation. Now this comes on a day where it was supposed to be a celebration. UNO held a press conference this morning announcing that New Orleans, again, music mogul and legend, Percy Master P. Miller, is now the president of basketball operations at the University of New Orleans. Guys, this is a shocking story and still in its infancy. And again, by the time this show airs on Thursday, we can find out even more information. I was telling you guys, this happened back in the 80s at Tulane. Hot Rod Williams, who again was a pretty good pro, went to the Cleveland Cavaliers, had a great career there, was one of the top players coming out of Louisiana, and Tulane had a really great basketball program. They had a point shaving scandal, and they disbanded the program for a few years. UNO's athletic program is on life support right now, okay? And especially the basketball program, with again having a really tough season. Stacey Halliwell comes over again after a few years removed from winning a championship at Loyola. And of course now you're in a situation where you have a betting scandal. As I mentioned to you guys earlier, I just happened to be reading about this last night. Talking about Jonte Porter of the Toronto Raptors, who was involved in a point-shaving scandal. And then as part of that article, 6 universities, which I was not aware of, that are involved in investigations right now in terms of, again, incidents with sports betting, point-shaving, etc. And now to have it hit home at the University of New Orleans is shocking. Thoughts?
To me, I'll be honest, it's not shocking, but it's not anything toward UNO. It's just the way that sports betting is now. As sports betting becomes something that's more prevalent and more accessible to people, it's gonna be tempting to bet and try to cheat the system and see if you can make a buck. And I mean, you're talking about these players at UNO. You just mentioned how with that program, it's already on life support. When you're talking about that athletic program, we're not talking about NIL bucks flowing through the privateers. And so the chance to maybe make a couple extra dollars, allegedly, the couple extra dollars, that can be tempting to a college kid who, maybe would like to earn some extra money for food or for rent or, for whatever it may be. And so I just think that as time goes on, we're going to see this more and more. People are going to learn how to be smarter about it, because you take Jonte Porter, for example. Nobody's betting on Jonte Porter. He's the 11th man on the bench. If you put up $1,000 on Jonte Porter, the alarms are going off at every sports book imaginable. That's where somebody like him went wrong. There are going to be people that try to cheat the system in different ways, in slicker ways, and it's going to continue to escalate. And I think one day there's going to be a scandal, honestly, where in a league potentially like refs, you know, are betting on the game or something like that. And then of course that's going to hurt the trust as far as the public with the integrity of leagues and whatnot. But I just think it's inevitable because the chance to make a couple extra dollars can sometimes be tempting for people.
Sure.
And I think like one of the things you said, like before we got to the segment on Seth, that was also key is these are kids. These are kids who are going to do things that they probably should not be doing. The problem here is that they're in the public spotlight, no matter what level that would be at, whether it be at a level like UNO is at, or even if you go to the SEC or you go to the NFL, things like this are going to happen to younger people. Additionally, they're going to want that money too. The problem is you've already seen precedents of it, even in the NFL, with people who are slightly older, they getting caught as far as gambling, not only on the team facility grounds like you're not supposed to, betting on themselves as well like you're not supposed to, and even hinted at with the refs as well. I'm a Lakers fan. Think about the 2002 series against the Sacramento Kings. It's a fact one of the referees was betting on the entire series as well. And it wouldn't be the first time we've seen something when it comes to officials doing something that was immoral. We know how the officials were in the NBA at the time when it came to Allen Iverson as well. So a lot of these things are, I think, some form of an inevitability. And again, whenever you don't have money coming in, like you may see some of your peers and contemporaries at higher levels doing it, you're going to be a little bit envious. You're going to want some of the money, and that inevitably is what is going to happen. Is next thing you know, I don't have enough money that I want to do the things that I want to do, whether it be with food or whether it be with clothes, whether it be just to live life, and then they put themselves in a compromising situation. The unfortunate part is now you put yourself in a rock and a hard place because, as you guys have already accurately said, UNO was in a very transitionary period, and not in a good way, with it being Stacey Hollowell's first year and them not having the best record by any margin of imagination right now. So you bring in Master P to hopefully bring some new life into it as the head of basketball operations, but what could have been and should have been a day of celebration is now a day where you get the first words of investigation.
And to that point, like we were talking about this off camera, when these kids, because like obviously these are allegations, but some of them will end up being true at whatever school. When the kids when this is happening, they're not thinking of it as criminal activity, right? Like they're not looking at it like they could be facing jail time potentially. They're just looking at it like, I could earn an extra $10. I can earn an extra $20 by doing something. And maybe with more stories like this, it can warn, right, of the troubles of, all right, if this is the route that you go, you are risking this, but you know they're kids, and so they're not necessarily thinking about just how deep of ramifications that it can be. We saw this with LSU baseball. That's right. With the opposing team and a dad calling in a bet all the way in Ohio, and it's like, why is somebody betting $100? It wasn't even a lot of money. It was like $100 on LSU baseball. Ring the alarm. Like, you know, so it's just people don't understand the ramifications, but hopefully stories like this can make that more apparent to people.
And again, the FBI has their tentacles up on sports betting. You've got the regulatory arms of each one of these states that are involved in sports betting. And as you guys mentioned, something out of the ordinary happens. Again, those antennas go up and there's an immediate investigation. You know, you're probably not getting stuff past Vegas as well.
And like you look at it as well, with no matter what the sports betting app would be, the immediacy of when you log in, they hone in on your location, and so they're going to know where you're at when you're gambling, who you are, because you have to put in personal information to create a profile and an ID. And I don't think a lot of these things, when they occur, whether in this scenario, alleged steal, report steal, or when there are confirmations down the line for precedences that we've spoken about already, there's nothing there that shows a bit of a wherewithal that is necessary, the foresight to say, if I do this, I'm going to get caught. And again, it goes from the kids to the young adults as well, not understanding that this is sports betting, this is gambling, and this is something that you should not do, A, because it's against the rules, but B, you compromise yourself, because what if it becomes something like a point shaving thing, as you've already said? What if it becomes something where you're betting on yourself, and it's the type of bet is a negative one, where you're saying that you're going to underperform. And then you underperform, and now that becomes questioning about your competitiveness and your genuineness when you're on the court, the field, or whatever your field of play is.
Because we've seen a few examples of this now. You take like Calvin Ridley, for example. Calvin Ridley, when he was with the Falcons, he bet on himself and the Falcons, but he kind of bet in a positive way.
Right.
Like he was betting in ways of like, oh, I think this is gonna happen. Whereas like Jonte Porter, he was betting his unders and calling out sick. You know what I mean? Like when you read some of the details of that, it was like, man, like, and he's calling his buddies like, I told you I'd do it.
Right.
No, you're gonna get caught.
Yes, and you're going to be gone from the league.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the other part of it. It was supposed to be a celebratory press conference today with Master P coming in as the president of basketball operations. Guys, your thoughts on that?
Well, Master P is the greatest hooping rapper of all time. I don't think there's any question. There is no rapper that has earned a spot in the summer league other than Master P, not to my knowledge at least. And I'm not sure if he didn't play in a couple preseason games.
He did.
For a team, for the Raptors, and I'm forgetting the second team. I mean, like, Master P is a hooper. He can ball. So, I mean, like, and obviously, like, his name in New Orleans holds so much weight. We've seen his involvement with the city of New Orleans when it comes to like entertainment. I forget what his exact title is, entertainment liaison. That's just Master P. You know what I mean, to me. But like, you know, we saw him welcome Taylor Swift in front of the Superdome. We've seen him with the like Walk of Fame, the NOLA Walk of Fame, and having like heavy involvement. So it's cool to see him in an older stage, like still being able to like give back and pour into the culture of New Orleans, because Master P also knows what UNO basketball once was, right? Like he remembers Irvin Johnson, you know, he remembers Tim Floyd, and he remembers how exciting it was at the Lakefront Arena at one time. And so to see him, the greatest rapping hooper of all time, get involved, I think that is a cool thing.
And I think that you touched on it in the most important way, is that it's not just, you know, Master P. It's Master P to the New Orleans community as well. And when they introduced him on Wednesday during the press conference, it's Coach Percy Miller as well. So there's an acknowledgement of what he does on the court, what he does off the court. And it's a full circle conversation in this particular juncture, because we started us off talking about the gambling, you know, allegations going on. But now you got somebody who can come in and hopefully just at face value, he'll be able to bring some money into not only UNO men's basketball, but the entire athletics program over there on the lakefront. So I think having him both from an athletic standpoint and a face value entertainment perspective as well really will be a bit of a perfect match for them and help them to get some of the funding they need to compete at a higher level, but also avoid maybe some of these pitfalls at current.
As incredible as his music career has been, as a businessman, again, he's been just as successful. So again, if you're UNO and you have the opportunity of maybe having him being a part of the face of your athletic department, where he can again get companies to come in, have NIL opportunities, pour some money into the program, which again is really hurting right now because of lack of funding. Again, I could see them going in that direction, and hopefully that will work. It's just unfortunate on a day where you're celebrating him coming in. Again, this was the overriding story at the University of New Orleans. All right, we'll get back to the collegiate game in our B block, but right now we'll talk a little bit about the New Orleans Saints. Seth, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on Kellen Moore and how he's put his staff together thus far?
I like Kellen Moore thus far. I mean, you know, we're a couple days in. It's the honeymoon phase, you know what I mean? But the thing that I like about Kellen Moore and what he represents the most is that he represents change. Look, the Sean Payton era was a great era in New Orleans. It produced the most success in franchise history by far, right? But the comparison that I've continued to use is that if Sean Payton, let's say Sean Payton is a chef, right? Sean Payton had that one dish that everybody came to the restaurant to eat. It was Michelin, it was 5 stars, you know, it's all that stuff, right? And okay, the chef leaves. Well, you can try to bring in another chef that worked under him to potentially make that dish, a la Dennis Allen or Darren Rizzi, but ultimately only that guy with his hands can make that dish the way that he made that dish. It might be time to bring a new cook and new cooks into the kitchen to see if we can revitalize this offense or this kitchen as I'm using in the comparison. And so like I love that he's bringing in so many fresh ideas. You talk about a Doug Nussmeier being the offensive coordinator and all of the experience that he has being a quarterback coach, not only on the pro level, but on the college level. You talk about bringing in a Brandon Staley, somebody who has head coaching experience and can maybe help him with some of those blind spots of not knowing what it is and some of the responsibilities that's there as a head coach. And then when you talk about the assistant coaches, it's a nice mix of not only guys that have been at the NFL, but there's also been a couple guys that have been hired from college who will also bring some fresh ideas from that level as well. So I just like the mix of new cooks in the kitchen to see if you can get the restaurant back booming again.
Well, hopefully Kellen Moore can find a sous chef like Drew Brees to help him in that kitchen.
Absolutely.
That's the key going forward. Jared, your thoughts?
I think that it is a little bit of a combination of what you said, Seth, with also, recognizing the one thing that stood out to me when it came to his intro presser for Kellen Moore was he was very ambiguous. He didn't give you a lot of specificity about timeline for hiring the coaching staff. He didn't give you a timeline about making decisions when it came to key roster moves like Derek Carr or Cam Jordan or any of that. One thing he was finding out about, who's calling the plays? I'm calling the plays. That's the one thing Kellen Moore definitively said. So he goes and he gets a Doug Nussmeier to be his offensive coordinator. And then you see he had a lot of love for his time in Los Angeles because he gets Brandon Staley to come be his DC, and he also brings Brendan Nugent to come back and be the offensive lines coach. But also recognize he's doing this in a new way with still a little bit of New Orleans flair with it. Doug Nussmeier, former Saints quarterback, bringing in Nugent. He used to work on the Saints staff back during the Sean Payton era. You have Jim Haslett's son, Chase Haslett, coming in to work as the tight ends coach. So he's doing things in a nuanced way while still bringing some of the hometown connections to it for the Crescent City. And I think one of the bigger things as well is we saw what happened when Zach Baun went into Vic Fangio's system. And next thing you know, he's a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. He's an all-pro linebacker, racking up 150-plus tackles. You want that kind of a system to thrive here in New Orleans. You want a little bit of a revitalization of the Dome Patrol. I mean, you have a guy like Demario Davis still on the staff. You don't know what's going to happen with people like Willie Gay who want a one-year deal, but you go and you get Brandon Staley, a guy coming from the Vic Fangio coaching tree. And remember how dominant the Rams defense was, nearly tops in the league in every category back whenever Staley was just a DC with Los Angeles back then. So I think he's doing everything the proper way as far as bringing in a lot of nuance, still bringing some familiarity into the building as well, because you have guys who, have not held those same positions, but guys who understand what the standard should be in the black and gold. And so bringing them in along with him trying to have the new ideas and keeping the fluidity and consistency on the offensive staff especially so he can run the way he wants it to be is also going to be key here. And so I'm still interested in seeing how they're going to reshape the roster as well and what kind of offense they're going to bring in, because we've seen him have two different styles where he was in Dallas for a few years and they were a pass-happy offense. And then this year they finish as the number one rushing offense and just dominate you on the ground until it's time to put it back in Jalen Hurts' hands and destroy you with an air attack as well.
To both of your points, Terry Joseph comes in as defensive back coach, local guy, again, cousin to Mickey and Vance. Had previously worked, at the University of Texas. He becomes the defensive passing game coordinator. They bring in Peter Sermon, again, who is the former Cal defensive coordinator, a guy, again, he's going to be their linebackers coach, a guy that comes from college. I want to concentrate on the defense for a moment. And Jared, I'll take you first. A lot of talk about Staley and the 3-4 defense, going to the 3-4 defense. You've got a New Orleans Saints defense that, again, for over a decade now, has had a prototype. 4-3 defense, those players are on the roster now. Man, when you look at it on paper, man, how do you get from a 4-3 to a 3-4 with the personnel that you have? And then, of course, the cap restraints you're dealing with $47 million over. So is Staley coming in and maybe taking, again, a slower approach in terms of flipping this from a 4-3 to a 3-4? Or is he diving in here and, again, saying, I'm going to make this work with the personnel that I have?
Well, I think it starts with the back end of what you just asked is about the personnel he's going to have. Are you going to maintain guys like a Cam Jordan on the roster? If that is the case, we've seen packages this past season where Jordan slides on the inside and they have kind of a NASCAR package like what the 2011 New York Giants had, and you have most of your predominant pass rushers there. Are you bringing back a Chase Young? What does Pete Werner fit into all of this? Is Willie Gay going to come back? I don't think you have to worry too much in the defensive backfield. You're still going to have the key four guys there if you bring them back as well. Alontae Taylor loves to play on the outside, even though he's been very good on the inside as a blitzer as well. But I think that'll really focus in on, if you have to really focus in on who will he have have to work with, who will be available to him. Again, with the cap once again being one of the giant hurdles they have to continuously deal with. So I think that answer will be dependent in the next couple of months on who he will have to be able to work with before you get into, mandatory minicamp, before you even get into voluntary OTAs, before you get even to rookie minicamp. You have to know who you're going to be working with. And I think that as time progresses, we'll see which approach he's going to have. But I would say it's kind of a middle of the ground at the moment, because we can't answer that until he can answer for himself who are the best seven for his front seven he's going to have on the field.
Seth, your thoughts?
I think that he dives right into it.
You think he goes 3-4?
I think he goes right into 3-4.
Okay.
Because I just think that they have to go right into the changes. Like you can't rip. You just have to rip the Band-Aid off, essentially. You know what I mean? And you got to understand too that there's going to be rough patches. You take a team like, I'm using a college analogy, but like Georgia Tech ran the triple option for forever. Well, once they ran the spread offense, it was ugly. You know what I mean? But it's one of those things where it's like, if you're trying to set a standard, if you're trying to do a thing, and of course, it doesn't mean that you're just going to be just 3-4. You may be 3-3-5 with a star, which they, run a good bit of. There's other ways to go about it, but you do have to get to that because you need the players that are going to be around to develop those habits of, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is going to be our identity. Even if let's say the Saints had a good year this year on defense, and Brandon Staley, for some reason, was a candidate to be a head coach. The next defensive coordinator that comes in most likely is going to be another guy that fits the 3-4 system and that fits maybe that Vic Fangio mold, if that's something that Kellen Moore believes, all right, this was something that was really hard for me to figure out as an offensive coordinator. I really want guys like that. And so I think you just dive right into it, and you have to figure out what pieces fit, how you can fit certain pieces. A lot of times defensive ends in a 4-3 convert to to outside linebackers. In a 3-4, does Cam move to an outside linebacker in a 3-4 if he's still on the roster? Or does he become a defensive end in a 3-4 because he's a little bit older now? You know what I mean? Those are so many of the questions. And honestly, that's part of, for me, what's the most exciting part about this offseason is for 20 years now, we've known exactly what the Saints have been looking for. We know what the offensive linemen look like for the Saints. We know what type of cornerback they like. We know what type of edge rusher they like. They have certain prototypes and things from Sean Payton. Now we go into this offseason where you can look for clues maybe on what they like, but we really don't know. And we're really looking at something completely different as far as the prototypes and as far as the styles of players that they like. And so I think the mystery of that makes it a really interesting offseason as they go into free agency and then they go into the NFL draft.
See, to your point, Kellen Moore was lauded because he was able to go to 3 different teams with 3 different offensive philosophies, and look at his personnel and say, I'm going to be able to adjust to the strength of my personnel. But yet again, we're looking at Staley coming in with a team that's been traditionally 4-3, has the inability to stop the run consistently. You mentioned the back end. Harris is a free agent, Adebo's a free agent. Are those guys coming back? Yes, you probably figure that Davis and Werner can play the inside linebackers on a 3-4. But again, who are going to be your outside linebackers? So again, it could be a total transformation. But I find it interesting. On one end, everybody's lauding the fact that again, Kellen Moore can come in and he can work with any type of players you have, and he'll adjust his system. But yet, Staley may be coming in and they may go just 3-4, and of course that means again radical change in terms of finding the type of players that can play that system. That means draft, and that means free agency. And when you don't have a lot of money in free agency, that's going to be difficult. Draft, again, you may be able to do that, but then of course then you're trying to cultivate young players.
1,000%. And the cultivation here may be like just trying to, at worst or at best, maybe in this scenario, doing a 3-4 or 4-3 hybrid to where there's a transitionary period going on.
That's a great point.
Where you can still keep some of the base they're familiar with while still getting them to adjust to what the 3-4 will require of them. And that'll be the struggle here is, can you knock it out of the park when it comes to another 2017 draft reiteration? Very hard to do.
Very hard.
But you're going to have to do that based on how your cap is looking. It also, depending on what band-aids you may also rip off, as you talked about, Seth, because we're talking about what are you going to do with Derek Carr, what you may do with Cam Jordan. But we have seen guys go into the 3-4 from a 4-3 and be that stand-up pass rusher and have success. I mean, look, I've paid attention to the Indianapolis coach since I was younger, but I remember when Robert Mathis went from a 4-3 to a 3-4 his first year, or his second year, maybe 19.5 sacks. And so but Cam Jordan was productive this year when he finally started to get the reps. But we've seen a fall off with the Saints from the defensive perspective when Dennis Allen went from being the DC to the head coach. So having somebody who's staying on his strong suit the most, no disrespect to Joe Woods whatsoever, but having somebody come in like a Brandon Staley who has had success as a defensive play caller, regardless of the play style or the scheme they may have, he'll be able to, I think, shore them back up to being a stop the run first in the traditional style we're accustomed to seeing.
And to your point, 81, 86, 06, 17, the 4 greatest drafts in Saints history. 81 sent Bub Phillips up, 86 set up Jim Moore and Jim Finks. 06 set up Sean Payton, and again, 2017 revitalized Sean Payton as a head coach in New Orleans. So again, the keys are right. You got to hit on these drafts, and again, it is going to be key for Kellen Moore and Mickey Loomis to hit on this draft coming out of the box here for his first year.
The other thing I say is, for Saints fans, bad isn't a bad thing. I know nobody wants to hear that, right? Like obviously people want to be competitive right away, but the truth of the matter is, based on the way that the salary cap is, based on the way that maybe the quarterback situation is, like sometimes you do need to bottom out. Like they've continued to kick this salary cap can down the road. Well, you got to pay the piper at some point. You know what I mean? And so it's like if you're bad, that's not necessarily a bad thing if it's clearing the way for 2026. And because like Kellen Moore, I can almost promise you that when he took this job, like yes, he may believe that there are things that he can do right away, but he got assurances that he's gonna get time to get this thing right. And when it came to like all of the head coaching openings this season across the NFL, the Saints had probably one of the worst situations on paper, but the thing that I always said would be a benefit to me if I was a head coach and I was looking at the Saints is the Saints are a patient organization. They're patient to a fault. They're loyal to a fault. And so you're gonna get at least probably 3 years to get it into the way that you wanted to, maybe even longer, because they're not looking to make quick changes. They are the opposite of the Carolina Panthers, who's had 7 coaches in 7 years, including like interim coaches and whatnot. Like they're the opposite of what they are. The Panthers are very quick natured as far as like when they make moves, but that's also part of the reason that they've had the worst or second worst record in the NFL over the last like 8 to 10 years, you know? And so so bad is not a bad thing. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but bad is not a bad thing if that's what takes place in 2025.
But I also think, just in the grander scheme of it all as well, Seth, is that you need to be bad finally, because it's been not just kicking it down the road when it comes to the salary cap, not just trying to find a way to still stay competitive. It's since the 2020 season, your last playoff run. Every year you end up around that 9-8, 8-8 mark, and you end up with not a top draft pick, maybe right now they're 9th in the NFL draft. That can still get you a good pick in this year's draft, because it isn't like you're not looking at a Shedeur Sanders or a Cam Ward to be a game changer. Not many pundits are, to be honest. But you need to bottom out, because you don't want to be mediocre. You either want to be very good and stay competitive and be a perennial Super Bowl contender, or you want to be really bad so you can build up the roster to get to the path of being a Super Bowl contender. You don't do that staying in the middle.
It's hard to be in purgatory.
It really is. And they've been
it's hard to be in purgatory.
Right, no doubt about it. Seth Lewis, Jared Paul Joseph, our guest tonight. I'm Eric Asher. I'm your host. We'll hear from our underwriters. We're going to come back and talk a little offense on the Saints. I'm not going to let that go. We'll come back and talk a little offense in the B block. We'll start there. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Seth Lewis of WLAE-TV Sports and Jared Paul Joseph of WGNO-TV Sports are our guests tonight. All right, guys, I want to stay with the Saints for a few more minutes, then we'll go to the Pels, and we'll jump into, again, what's happening collegiately in basketball and also baseball. Offense. It starts with, again, the decision on Derek Carr because, again, of his cap figure. Jared, let me go with you first. Do they stick with Derek Carr this year? Is this a bridge quarterback? Is he going to? He says he's not taking a pay cut. Do they restructure his deal? Do they pull the Band-Aid off, as Seth has talked about? Move on, get rid of him, take the cap hit, go with a younger player? What do they do?
I think they should do that. I think they should rip the Band-Aid off, go with a younger quarterback, and just finally rip it down to the studs. Go with somebody who you can at least see if maybe Spencer Rattler's the guy, and try to finally get that transitionary period going. Derek Carr talked about not taking a pay cut because you see what he's put on tape, but what he's put on tape is a lot of injuries, and this past year, unnecessary injuries. And one of the things that, Darren Rizzi, when he was interim head coach, and even the team as a whole flaunted was, well, we don't win without Derek Carr quarterback. That goes to what the rest of the roster is and the situation you throw a young quarterback into. When you have Jake Haener, a second-year guy, and Spencer Rattler as a rookie going in there's no possible way that they're going to have a great formula to go in and win when the interior of your offensive line is messed up. Your top two receivers are out. You have Taysom Hill go down. Like, the pieces were falling apart no matter who would have been in that quarterback. But Derek Carr has shown he has good ability, but he is starting to slowly lose availability. And I think you just got to go down to the studs.
And they were throwing the people off the street. You know what I mean? I won't go as far to say that they were throwing to me and you, but they were throwing the people that we had a debate on our show before the season started. Who is going to be the Saints' third wide receiver to step up? Is it going to be A.T. Perry or is it going to be Cedric Wilson? Right. Well, it ended up being Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and he wasn't even on the roster for the first 8-9 weeks. You know what I mean? To answer your question, I think that Derek Carr is going to be on this team because the cap hit is so great before June 2nd. And you're going to need flexibility before free agency anyway.
It's like $30 million, again, if you cut him and you take the cap hit post-June 1st, but it doesn't help you in free agency, right?
Yeah, it doesn't help you in free agency. Now, it may help you down the line, right? But so I have a feeling that they're going to stick with Derek Carr, even maybe the relationship that Derek Carr and Kellen Moore has had. Now, I will say, too, Kellen Moore in his press conference, to Jared's point about him being ambiguous, he never, committed to Derek Carr. It was not this, Derek Carr is our guy. And the biggest difference that you could tell was when he talked about Alvin Kamara, he spoke about him like, man, for years in the league, people have been looking for an Alvin Kamara. And I look forward to working with him and seeing what else we can do. He said the same thing about Taysom Hill. He said, man, for years and years, people have looked for a Taysom Hill in the league, and no one has ever found a Taysom Hill. And so, those were statements that were maybe a little bit more committal in my mind, even if Taysom Hill isn't on the roster. Right. It's definitely a desire to coach him, right? Yeah. But with Derek Carr, he's an excellent player. We're going to work with him and, figure it out. I will say this about Derek Carr. I think because he doesn't seem very popular with Saints fans, I think he's probably better than what Saints fans believe. But I also think he's probably not as good as he believes, right? He's probably somewhere in the middle of all of that. I mean, like, you know, he mentions the top 12 in QBR, in quarterback rating. That's a real thing for Derek Carr, and he had really good moments like those first 2 weeks. But also, you can't hang your hat on the first 2 weeks.
Right.
That sounds insane, right? And also, sometimes some of those stats can be empty calories. They can come at times when the Saints are trailing and like, okay, it seems like they're getting close. But like Derek Carr, over his career, has proven that he is a quarterback that you can win with, but he is not a quarterback that is going to win you games. Like, he's not a guy that's going to go out there and throw for 400 yards and like, that's just not him. Like, if there's enough pieces around him, maybe he can be okay. Maybe you can get some wins, but he is not the guy that you hang your hat on and say, all right, go win me a game. Like, that's just not who he is, and that's okay, and he's been still rewarded very handsomely despite that.
You don't have to worry about again whether he's going to eat bread tomorrow.
No, indeed.
He's going to be all right.
Yeah, he can go to any restaurant.
He's going to be all right, no doubt about it. All right, let's shift gears to the Pelicans. Again, I'm calling it the Tankathon, and again, they're not helping me out here, okay? 15-43, back-to-back wins over the Spurs. Again, right now, Washington has won 10 games. Charlotte and Utah have won 14 games. Pelicans are at 15 games in the tank for Cooper Flag sweepstakes. First of all, your thoughts on Willie Green, and again, whether Willie Green will return or not. Is he going to be the guy that's going to really kind of take the hit for this season, in your opinion?
I think that there's a chance that he comes back. I didn't feel as good about that, like maybe earlier on in the season, but I think that he could come back, and I think part of the reason is like when you listen to David Griffin talk during that press conference after the trade deadline, he mentioned that they still believe in Willie, and he lamented a lot about the amount of injuries that mounted up for this team. And not only that, but that, and I thought it was a good moment of honesty from Griff, that when they made the DeJounte Murray trade, we had all believed that a Brandon Ingram trade was next up, but he admitted that was the plan, was to trade Brandon Ingram, but because of the new salary cap rules and the second apron in the NBA, that wasn't maybe as able. And so I think that Willie, now that Zion is back, has shown, it's not like, man, there was some games where it just was uncompetitive at all times. They still have scary moments. I mean, even in these last two wins, they have quarters where it's like, man, is the controller off? You know what I mean? Like, did they plug it in? You know what I mean? Like the first quarter on Tuesday night, and then on Sunday it was the second quarter where they scored like 13 points. It's like, hey, is anybody awake? Is like anybody in there? But they also, two things I'll give this group. I don't feel like they've ever necessarily like given up. You know what I mean? Like
they're not tanking.
They're not tanking. And I do think that it does mean something when your group responds, right? Like we've seen teams in the NBA just call it quits, you know what I mean, over time. And also, oddly, and this could be a good or a bad thing, the vibes have never necessarily been bad with New Orleans. Like, and what I mean by that is, this group seems to genuinely still like each other. You bring people out of it, you bring people into it. We've seen toxic locker rooms, and we've maybe heard about it later and they say, oh, that makes sense. But like these guys genuinely seem to care about each other. They seem to genuinely root for each other. And that is to some credit to David Griffin, but then also to some credit to Willie Green and like kind of how he leads that group.
Yeah, same question.
I don't think that Willie Green should take the hit for this. And I go back to your chef example when it came to Kellen Moore going in there or Sean Payton. You got to make sure they have the right ingredients to give you. You cannot ask a chef to give you filet and you give him a skirt steak. That's not what should be happening here. And Willie Green gets a very bad hand this entire season. We're talking about a coach who, entering year 4, the previous 3 years, continually getting more wins each season. And on the back end of last year, you thought they may have had a good chance at a playoff run. But right when the season's coming to the end, Zion, hamstring injury per usual, and that's the struggle they've had to deal with. So I think Willie Green should not be taking the hit for this. He should get a year of grace because, as you guys have said, this team is not done fighting. They still want to compete. They still want to go out there and win. During those bad moments against some of the other teams where they've had very bad stretches, 10-plus losing streaks multiple times this year. We're talking about a group, even when DeJounte Murray came back temporarily, they had to fight losing because they forgot how to win, and then they had to relearn how to win, let go of some of the losing habits, and you still see a couple of those spurts in those quarters you guys have referenced already, but they're still not going to give up. And when Zion comes in there and he doesn't play but barely 30 minutes a night, and he's still giving you 22 points and nearly a double-double at the same time, you're seeing some kind of a resurgence here as far as what he can do as a real professional now, and I will applaud him because whenever he was suspended that one game, the most frustrating thing that I saw were national talking heads talking about, oh, he's eating again, oh, he's doing this and that. Y'all clearly are not watching the games. Because he's gotten so slim. I didn't need a report to come out and tell me he weighed 264. I could see it because we see him every day. There was even a point, I forget which game, they were wearing purple jerseys, but like maybe against one of the Wizard matchups, like Eve Misi hit the floor, and for a split second I thought it was Zion, and that's not to exaggerate a point, but it's to say he's gotten so slim to a point, I'm confusing him with a 7-foot slender man. So I think he's really figured out how to keep his body in shape. They're trying to preserve him for the future because they want to fight this year, but they also know they're not going to even be a play-in team this year. And they can still tank. I mean, even when they got Zion, they weren't like the worst team in the NBA. I think they had the 4th best chances in the lottery that year, and they still ended up with the #1 pick. So you can still, tank for flag and still find your way to the mountaintop with that.
Well, and to that exact point, like the Hawks won the lottery last year. And they were in the play-in. I think they had the 13 best odds. And so, like, all that losing and tanking does is it gives you more lottery balls. You know what I mean? Like, it gives you more chances. But it's not guaranteed that you're gonna end up with a top 4 pick. Like, there have been a lot of years where the team with the best odds ends up with the 5th pick because those other teams all moved up into the top 4 by winning this new version of the lottery. So yeah, I think, and it's funny, the real note that I wanted to add to his was when he said, man, you need the right ingredients. You also want your ingredients to like not have diseases on it. You know what I mean? Like you want the ingredients. You want your ingredients to be fresh, to be FDA approved. You know what I mean? Like when your ingredients are, when they're taking oysters off the shelves, it's like, hey, we can't use oysters anymore in the restaurant. So health has been such a big issue for them this season.
But it cannot continue to be an excuse,
it cannot continue to be.
And that's what both franchises.
It cannot continue to be an excuse. I 100% agree with that. But look, if anybody falls on the sword, unfortunately, it's going to be Willie, right? Like that is the first person that's going to go. But I don't know if it would be fair to him because he's dealt with the most starting lineups in the NBA this season.
Great. All right, guys, I want to talk before we go and talk a little college about Zion. 5,000 points, 203 games, 3rd fastest in the NBA history. Again, it was Luka. 194 games, LeBron 197 games, took Williamson 203 games to get 5,000 points. I talked about this on the radio show. It's bittersweet.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. I mean, on one hand, you're saying, oh my gosh, first of all, this year, 24 points a game, 7 rebounds, 7.4 rebounds, 4.9 assists, 264 pounds, playing 30 minutes a game. He's played incredible. But at the same time, you look at, 205 games now, 0 playoff appearances, and you say what could have been. The issue has been that Zion has never really, again, reached the pinnacle that a lot of people thought he was when he was the first overall pick.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on him reaching this? This is a milestone. This is it really is 5,000 points in that short of a period of time.
It is a milestone, but it's also wild to say that he reached that many games after 6 years. And I can certainly understand the disappointment. What I would say is there is a reason why the Pelicans haven't given up on him yet. And it's because what I call you need an alien to win in the NBA. Like you can look back at, let's say, the last 30 years. The only team that didn't have what I'm going to call a superstar on their roster and won a championship was the Detroit Pistons back in like 03, 04, right? Other than that, like you can go back down the list and every team has had this really unique guy. They don't make Zions on trees.
No, they don't.
Like Zions don't come in store. You got to order that one special. So like, and to your point about the 0 playoff appearances, one of the most disappointing parts about last year and him suffering that hamstring injury was because that was the most healthiest that we've seen him, right? He played 73 games or 70 games. He was eligible for all of the postseason awards. He didn't get any, but he was still eligible to make All-NBA and things of that nature. And when he's been healthy, he looks like the end of that Lakers game when he was taking over with LeBron and AD on the court. He was the best player on the court that day. His last year was his most healthy year. The team ends up winning the second most wins, getting the second most wins in franchise history. The year before, when he had that stretch and he made the All-Star team, and then he got hurt right after January 1st, on New Year's, the Pelicans were first in the Western Conference. So not only is Zion a really good player, but Zion's skills and abilities translate to winning too. It's just a matter of him staying on the court. But if he stays on the court, this is a team that I believe, with the right pieces around him, can legitimately contend for a championship, because in the short samples that you see, he wins.
And I think that was the pitfall, though, was they depended on them short samples to become the status quo heading into this year. They went all in, getting a DeJounte Murray, letting Najee Marshall walk, trading Dyson Daniels to the Atlanta Hawks. And next thing you know, he's become a quality player in Atlanta. You see how Najee Marshall's doing in Dallas. And so you lost a lot of your depth. You did. But I do think Zion Williamson, above all else, he's an impact player. And as you said eloquently, Seth, is that his skills translate to wins. There are a lot of players in the NBA who are on bad teams where they're dominating, but they're still losing. When he dominates, when he goes off, defenses collapse upon him. His ball vision has gotten very well. Next thing you know, he's getting assists, and players are getting wide open and getting threes. I believe last year at some point, they had the highest three-point percentage of the NBA just off of assists from Zion when it came to three-point range. And so I think when you have somebody in there to dominate like that, he's going to figure it out. You have to not give up on him. You just, people overreacting to a couple of, his own personal pitfalls, trying to over-exaggerate the weight thing. Look, I've been a big guy most of my life. You got to figure some of that stuff out. But also, when it comes to being a big man in the NBA, they need 5 to 7 years to really understand what their body's going to be, how they're going to operate in the league as well. And lastly, hopefully he's figuring it out from a mental standpoint, because you talked about trading away B.I. earlier. Remember what he said in his intro presser with Toronto. It's good to be around guys who work hard and want to listen. Right. And so it's who are you exactly talking about there?
Yeah. And who do you think they were talking about?
A guy who's a ZW, but I'm going to leave that in there.
There you go. All right, guys, let's shift to college with just a few minutes left in the program. First of all, LSU still has a chance, their men's basketball team, to get into the NIT, which is crazy. 14-14, 3-12 in the SEC. SEC could have 14 teams that go into the NCAA. There's 2 automatic qualifiers for the NIT, and it looks like South Carolina and LSU may get those 2 automatic qualifiers in the NIT, which is crazy. Tulane right now trying to stay in the top 4. Again, they're 15-12, 9-5 in the American Athletic Conference, trying to stay in that top 4 so they get that double bye into their tournament. Of course, again, UNO, we talked about that 4-25, 2-16 now with, again, the gambling scandal. Doesn't look like, again, right now on the men's side, we're going to see, again, teams getting into the big tournament. A whole different story on the women's side. LSU women, 7th in the nation right now, 27-2, 12-2. They clinched the double bye in the SEC tournament. SLU women continue to dominate, 18-0 in their conference, 24-3 in the Southland, 24-3 overall. Let's talk about Xavier, what the Gold Nuggets are doing right now, okay? 26-2, ready to go in the Red River Athletic Tournament in Alexandria later this week. And then, of course, the Tulane women right now are 16-11, 9-7. Let's take women first, because we've got a few minutes left in the show. Incredible women's basketball in Louisiana right now.
Yeah, but I say the guys don't deserve.
They really don't. They don't deserve.
We don't need to talk about the guys. The women really deserve the love. I mean, you talk about what LSU has done. I mean, as of now, they've lost to the number 1 team in the country and the number 5 team in the country, the number 6 team in the country, and that's it. I mean, what they've been able to do, and they have some really impressive wins. I know people have sometimes they've zoned in on those 2 losses, but 2 wins against a top 15 team in Tennessee. They have a win now against Kentucky. who's in the top 25. And then they beat in non-conference NC State, who just knocked off the previous number one team in Notre Dame. And so, like, LSU is playing really good basketball. The SEC on both sides has been really good this season. That's part of the reason why the LSU men are in any type of conversation for the postseason, is because the SEC has been so good and so dominant. But I've seen Southeastern play. Southeastern is a really good team. They're deserving of an NCAA spot. Obviously, in the Southland, you have to win that conference tournament in order to make the NCAA tournament. But they have so much depth. I mean, they're like probably like 9-10 deep, and any of those girls can go off on any night. And then you brought up Xavier, who's had a couple good years back to back, right? I mean, it's just been a good year for a lot of the ladies, and hopefully they see the fruits of that in NCAA tournament appearances or in NAIA appearances, or even when it comes to LSU. I think this is a team that could make a run to the Final Four.
John, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to speed blitz this because there's so much meat on the bone here, but I think Xavier really is, they've been doing so well, and they're really starting to capitalize on some of the things that have been going on over there, and it's happy to see for them. I think what you see with Xavier, Southeastern, and LSU, there's basketball, then there's men's basketball in the state of Louisiana right now. With Southeastern, the way that Coach Gazzardo has them playing, there was a game earlier, about a week or two ago, they played against Nichols. It was tight for a while. They only allowed 4 points in the third quarter against Nichols. Didn't allow a field goal, so they only scored from the stripe. So that lets you know how dominant this team can be, both offensively and defensively. Now, when you go to LSU, they are playing good. They just got that win against Kentucky, but I'm concerned, because against the top competition, they've sputtered a little bit. Now, their 2 losses are against the top 2 teams in the SEC, but they're against the top 2 teams in the SEC. And you're the 3rd best team of the SEC. And you just have to battle back against the 4th best team of the SEC. And so you did secure the double bye. You will have a little bit of time to rest, but I wonder what's not clicking in terms of having physicality, having chemistry, having clutch playmaking going on. Some of the things Kim Mulkey hinted at when they lost to Texas was that's another game they should have had in hand. They should have been able to beat Texas and come away with just 1 loss still on the season, and they shortchanged themselves in the back end of the second, in the third and fourth quarters against them. So I think we have to see them grow in the moments as the season continues to progress.
I still think 2 losses we're talking about against two top 5 teams, right?
2 losses.
Two pretty good teams, 2 teams that will contend for championships. And I mean, the biggest thing that LSU is going to have to overcome is who is the 4th scorer, right? Like, we know Anissa Morrow is an All-American. Flau'jae is an All-American. If Michaela is not an All-American necessarily this year, at some point before her career is done in Baton Rouge, she will be an All-American. She reminds me of Simone Augustus a lot. That 4th person, and especially like who steps up at point guard, is going to be the biggest thing with LSU. But Texas, they led for a majority of that game, right? And then it kind of slipped at the end. And then South Carolina was a game that it didn't look like maybe some of the games of the past with them, right? And South Carolina also, I don't think, are world beaters this year either. Like, they aren't a team that has that superstar player. So, like, they're a team that, like, LSU may be able to catch in the SEC tournament. But it is good that, like, at least in my opinion, that LSU has faced some really good competition going into March, so that they know, all right, this is how we're gonna have to take care of it.
The 4th scorer is the main concern for me, because the South Carolina game, they were contested heavily on about 70% of their shots, and the offense was clamped down for most of that game as well. So I think they really have to find a way to see who will perform for them outside of the big 3, because you're gonna get 20 rebounds from Anissa Morrow, 15 points. Michaela Williams can go off for 30 at any time, and Flau'jae is great 2-way as well. So at some point, you got to have somebody step up, whether it be a Kaylin Gilbert or somebody else off the bench, come in and really provide you another 15 to 20 so you can overcome the hump.
An absolutely incredible panel tonight. Seth Lewis and also Jared Paul Joseph. Guys, thanks so much for joining us on the program tonight. Love to have you guys back as a panel again. This has really been good. Thanks again for joining us here on the program.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, there you go. Again, thanks so much for tuning in. Again, plenty of ways to catch our program. There's a QR code on your screen right now that'll take you to WLAE-TV YouTube channel or to my website, ericasher.com. Between Pelican Sports, WLAE-TV, WLAE-TV 2. Again, between Thursday, Friday, Saturday, so many ways to catch the program. I hope you get set set the DVR and never miss the show. Catch me on the radio, 106.1 The Ticket. You can listen live at ericasher.com. I'm on 4 to 6 weekdays. Also, again, we have our own app. That's 106.1 The Ticket app. You can download and, again, take the station, the show with you everywhere. We're also on iHeartRadio app, TuneIn Radio app as well. And of course, as always, we want to thank the underwriters who make this show possible. Each and every one of those underwriters, we thank them. Please support our underwriters. And of course, again, the staff here at WLAE-TV who do an incredible job producing our program each and every week. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, and the best director on the planet, William Hill. For Jared Paul, and also for Seth, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.
Love sports? Then you should know about STEM. Because maximizing nutrition, analyzing peak muscle performance, calculating the perfect shot, and more are all made possible by science, technology, engineering, and math. In fact, there are more careers than ever in sports science. So if you have a passion for sports, then think about getting involved in STEM and improve everyone's game on and off the field. Get inspired at SheCanSTEM.com.
Hey, Louisiana, how are you stopping litter?
In Terrebonne Parish, we put our trash in a bag.
And never out the window.
In Bienville, we bag it, tie it, and put a lid on it.
We keep litter out of our lakes in Lafayette.
And in Calcasieu Parish, we keep our truck beds clean.
And we secure our loads.
We need every person in every parish to stop littering and let Louisiana shine.
We're local and educational. You're watching WLAE-TV, celebrating 40 years of New Orleans public television.